I dropped to my knees in that hotel room adjacent to my bed and I bawled. I mean, bawled as if someone had just died. And maybe someone did. Maybe it was the version of me that didn't know and that had never been exposed to this before. I just wanted to preface that this is the event, the day that made me decide, cut the cameras. I'm not sharing any more stories. I'm not doing anything else that is going to share this experience in real time, because I need to feel whatever God has me here to feel and see and experience and process and digest. And I did that, and I intended to share my thoughts at a later date. And so this is that later date. So I'm bracing myself as I go back and watch it, and I'll take you on that journey with me. Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name's Ashley, and I am gonna take you on a trip to Uganda. I actually started filming this halfway through my trip, and so what I'm gonna go through is the second half. I don't want this to be a sad story, but I just have to preface that going into this set of vlogs, I love Uganda. I think it's extremely beautiful, but through that experience, I had to look past the beauty into some really hard truths to accept about our world and the inequality within it. I do want to talk about some of the things that I mentioned in that first half. I'm looking at my computer, so it's kind of queued up with the things that I'm gonna watch and react to, and add in things that maybe I didn't have the mental capacity to talk about or Wi-Fi to talk about, and post and whatever. But actually what I'm about to show you is the field day. I'm going to see the people from my research project in person, and for those who don't know, which is probably all of you, I was working on a project concerning individuals living with HIV. Unfortunately, the population that we're working with was children, so it's kind of two hard truths to swallow. I got to see them in their hometown, and their hometown was Colossians, which I didn't realize was kind of like the HIV hub of Uganda, or where kind of the epidemic for that region originated, or at least that's what I was told by a local after the experience. And then it kind of made sense, like I felt like something was in the air there, metaphorically, not literally, but just it was a pretty somber day. So we ended up taking a road to get to the field. It was more than like a couple of hours, and anytime I got in a car to ride a longer, like for any reason that I got in a car instead of on a boda, it was on a bumpy road that it makes you feel like you're on a roller coaster, literally, because there's no stop signs, no nothing, and so people just kind of do what they want. But there are these speed bumps, and it's not just one speed bump, they put like 5 of them at a time, and there's no one regulating it. So most people that I rode with in a car, besides my personal driver, who's the one that picked me up from the airport and took me back and all that, besides him, who was paid to do a professional job, anyone else that I was just casually in the car with just kind of like, it was awful. And clearly you'll see some of that, and you can see that I'm like I'm not here for it. But I was told that we were on a road that if we kept taking it, it would take us to Tanzania, which I just thought was just one of those weird moments that reminded me that I'm like 7,000 miles away from home, like in the middle of Africa, in the middle of the motherland. But this was just my first exposure to anything outside of Masaka town or that region. This is going to be different sections where I actually took the time to capture a little more detail of specific events. And so when you see me pull out the camera or show these things, it's for this moment because I wanted to talk about it with you guys, so feel special. We stopped on the way there to get food, and it's not like you stop to get, you know, your neighborhood McDonald's or whatever. Like there's none of that. There's none of that. And so people said to me that,
oh, you know, most restaurants, like, they all carry the same thing. You know, you pretty much get the same thing everywhere.
And I thought it was like a colloquial thing to say.
No, you get the same thing everywhere.
But I realized that, like, no, like, we would go to actual restaurants and you sit there and it's like, where's the menu? We have no menu. Matoka. Matoka, whatever meat. Don't ask me what meat it is. I don't know. I just ate it. And I'll show you the plate of food that we ate, like, at the actual research site. But on the way there, I was wondering what we were gonna stop and get, and we stopped at this place that they identified as the hospital. And I didn't film it, but I'm setting up the scene to say that we stopped at one of these type places on the way to the actual place we were heading to, and we were given food, but it was rice in batter, and that's it. No meat, no vegetables, just white rice and batter. And I'm eating it, I'm trying to eat it, but then it occurs to me, I'm like, this is literally just rice and batter. You don't know true poverty until you are eating rice in batter as your meal. Listen, I'm not trying to discredit anyone's struggle experience. I just want to raise awareness that we all should think a little bit harder about what it really means when people say they grew up in poverty. Because depending on context, that may or may not be actually true. In the States, we say we have struggle meals and whatnot. Like, I do understand there's levels to this. However, when your standard of access is to white rice and flour, there's a problem. And that's what I'm raising awareness about here. So just bear with me. The things that I'm gonna showcase in this town are things that people who have said and claim to have grown up in poverty have never and will never experience. Because what we define as poverty in the United States is different than what is described as poverty or a favela or a slum, or, you know, like, there's levels to this. And so rightfully so, I think a little bit more critically when someone says to me, I grew up in poverty or I grew up poor. And I really feel like if you are in the United States, I am not discrediting anyone's experience, but if you're in the United States, no matter what tier you're at, the level of poverty is different. It's different. And I just feel like we all should be aware of that. Because I understand that not everyone gets to see this up close, but that's exactly why I'm showing it to you. So don't judge me. I just could not deal with the white rice and batter. And as I ate, I could only stomach like a few bites of it because I realized what it was and how, like, this is not like an okay thing to be eating as your sustenance. And then I got to the bottom of it and there was like a bug in it or something.
It's passion. It's cocktails.
It's amazing. All the juice.
Orange. Really?
Passion
Orange.
and orange. Does it have mango too? With passion? It's so good. All the juice here is amazing. That juice really was amazing. Like, I can still taste it. And at the end, there was like a bug in it. So all that had happened before I filmed this, and that's where we begin. So I'm in the field doing work for the research. So I'm in the field doing work for the research that I came here to do. And it's been a wild ride, and out of the respect for the participants, I'm not going to of respect for the participants, I'm not going to film everything, but I anticipate that when I come home, I'm gonna have reverse culture shock because yeah, this is different. Okay, I have a little bit more time. Okay, I have a little bit more time to talk. Actually, I don't have any words, so I'm just gonna I'm gonna cut it here. You have to excuse me, like, looking pretty rough. I'm gonna look rough in a lot of these videos because there was no mirror. There's no mirror in any of the bathrooms except for the one where I was staying, and I'm miles and miles and miles away from home. I had eaten that stuff that I mentioned earlier, and yeah, just give me some grace. Just seeing the emotion in my face, I hadn't even gone through the day yet. I just arrived and was kind of having some downtime while everybody else was collecting logistics from the participants that we were waiting on to show up, and I just had time to sit and reflect and look around at my surroundings, and someone's in the corner herding cattle, and I'm being warned not to use the restroom, which we'll come back to that. And I'm just taking it all in, and it's also the first time that I've met someone knowing their HIV status, and so there's just this feeling kind of sadness, especially when I'm seeing a kid and I know that you're here because you have HIV and there's nothing that I can do about it. So, I'm gonna hold it together. I have not looked at this since I filmed it, so it's very important to me that I filmed it because I knew that this would be meaningful later on to see, but even just giving that recollection and now seeing the clinic kind of like as I described, it looks inhospitable. Like there's no reason why what I regard as normal and what they regard as normal are two completely different normals. It makes me think of 6 years ago when I volunteered at a church in New Orleans, which is obviously following Hurricane Katrina several years ago. But what the people in the first ward or the lower ninth ward regarded as a levee were two different, like the same term was being used to describe two completely different things. One is like a flimsy thing that like piece of metal, you know, right, which people complained about for years and they didn't fix it, and then that's why we had Hurricane Katrina, which only affected certain people in certain wards. But anyway, and then on, you know, in more privileged areas, it was, I don't know, it was something that people could like walk their dogs on and like go running and jogging, and it makes me think of my normal and what I expect when I go to a clinic. There's no way, there's no circumstance, even in the dustiest neighborhood in the United States, would I go to a clinic and it would look like this. How is that fair? And I don't know that I said this in the earlier videos, but like, I wanted to come back and be like,
y'all, it's not what they tell you. It's not.
But it is though. Parts of it is, and it's not everywhere. I probably need to say this in every video. I cannot speak for the entire country or continent, but from what I saw, not just in these specific regions, but I did go up and throughout the entire country, which is beautiful, but beyond the beauty is the poverty, and it cannot be unspoken about. Even today I watched a video about like Europe, because I have a Europe trip coming up, you know, right? My privilege seeing 2 different continents in 1 year. But even she complained, well, not complained, but even she like brought awareness to her American privilege just being in Europe and like talking about people paying for restrooms, which reminds me of paying for restrooms in Thailand, or not having ice, you know, because we just have like such great irrigation and we can trust the water that comes out of our faucet to like give us. Anyway, I don't know how I'm gonna go through this without ranting, but so maybe I'll edit it down, but this is out here, y'all. And I can't come back saying it's not what they tell you, it's not what you think, because when people travel, most of the time they just go to the central city, and I was not in the central city. Not only was I not even in the city that I was staying in for most of my program, but I was on the outskirts. And I'd never done something like that since like Thailand, but even being on the outskirts, like it's different. Now that's bringing me back, yeah, in Thailand, I went to like a leprosy village, or I went to another part of town where I'm like, these kids had never seen anyone that looked like me. I had never seen anyone that looked like them. Like I didn't know, excuse my ignorance, but like I didn't know that the hue of like the Asian diaspora went that deep, you know? And I have kids turning around looking at me like, the heck is that? You know? There are these completely neglected parts of the world, and it just blows my mind that people don't talk about it. And then when I come back here to the States and I want to raise awareness, or I want to say like, hey, well, this summer in Uganda I saw this, or like, hey, people are living like this in different parts of the world, and no one wants to hear it, no one wants to talk about it. And I'm kind of at a whisper because my voice is cracking, but also because I have neighbors, but screw these neighbors. I look around and I see it through 2 lenses that I'm able to have. One, through the lens of this is wrong to have anyone living under the circumstances of this type of poverty. And then the other lens, the preferable lens, is the one that sees the mountains surrounding me, the trees blowing in the wind, the seeds on the tree that I was just told the kids use to play a specific type of game that I can't remember the name of. And I wonder if the people here wake up and look around and realize, wow, we have perfect weather every day. Look how beautiful the music is. Look how beautiful the mountains are, and this freaking bird that I keep trying. I'm trying to get the bird. I'm gonna go try and find the bird. Look. The video doesn't do it any justice. It has so many colors. It has so many colors, and when it flies, it is gorgeous. Oh my goodness. Wow, you can see based on the things that I chose to film, I was still looking for the beauty everywhere. So even though I saw the poverty in my forefront, in the backdrop, I can see the mountains, I can hear the birds, I can see the parrot, I can look at my surroundings and imagine a scenario where, I don't know, tourist culture is bringing in money. I know that there's pros and cons with that, but when I think about the poverty in Thailand or the poverty in Uganda, it's completely different, because at least Thailand has tourism pouring in dollars, even though their currency is still what it is. Uganda does not have that, and it's not that it's any less beautiful. Like, it is a beautiful country, but people don't go because of what they fear, because of the truths that now I can confirm like are true in terms of like not having your privileged amenities in a lot of spaces. But the beauty is still there, and I just want to make sure that as I highlight these very negative and challenging truths, that I also highlight the beauty that I was constantly seeking. And there was this beautiful bird that kind of just signaled a ray of hope in a challenging space for me that day. Yeah. What I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that there's beauty everywhere if you only look for it. And I'm looking for it and I see it. It's everywhere. And yeah. I was thinking about this a few minutes ago. Anyone who can fix their mouth to say people in impoverished conditions, no matter what the country, just need to work hard. These people are working hard. They're probably working harder than you and have a fraction of what you have. Don't tell me these people need to work hard. Or don't tell me the solution isn't in giving money. It's multifactorial. And I'm gonna get off my soapbox. But that was on my mind. Oh my gosh, the bird. Oh my gosh, I missed him. It's right here. It just flew. Okay, it's coming to me, guys. Maybe it'll fly again. I gotcha this time. That bird just was the joy I needed that day. But yeah, I still 100% agree with everything I said. And coming back to school and having conversations about poverty and classism and how these things bleed into things like medical access and the way that we go about medicine in a non-preventative way, for the most part, is challenging to explain to privileged people like myself, but who are even more privileged than I, about the benefit of what money can do. And again, it's not the full solution, but it is part of the solution. And to be able to fix your mouth, exactly as I said in the video, to be able to fix your mouth and say that it's not important or attainable is false. We had a discussion recently about Eastern medicine ways of going about things instead of just Western medicine ways of going about things, and how much money is going into the pharmaceutical companies. And I guess I'm gonna get this thing demonetized before I even start, but whatever. We talked about like hard numbers, and so how can we say that it would cost too much to shift to preventative means of care and to train people to teach their patients how to care for themselves in a more sustainable way, or to teach our fellow colleagues how to treat their patients in a more sustainable way, effective way, and yet we spend all this money on something that's not even fixing the problem? Like how are both true? How does that make sense? Anyway. We'll continue watching this. And also, I never went to that stinking disco because so I've been asking where the restroom was around here, and I've been told not to trust them in the village. I'm not ready to see it again. I was told not to trust the restrooms in this area at this facility. And again, this should signal to you how inhospitable is a perfect term to use for what I was describing this maternity ward as. Because if you don't have restrooms that even the local people that I'm with trust, there's a problem. And I knew that, but I had already been holding my peace for like hours. And I saw it and I was like, what we're not gonna do is that. That's what we're not gonna do. And so I thought, And it was at this exact moment that I knew I was gonna hold my bladder for the next however many hours. And then I'm looking around at my surroundings, which I know that I'm only gonna be there for a finite amount of time, but this is where you live, and it's looking like something out of like a documentary. But it's one thing to see those things and know it exists out there somewhere, and to actually be there, looking at it, experiencing it. The fact that y'all will never see what it looked like on the inside of that is beyond me. Because of course I didn't take my camera and film, at least I don't think I did. But this is their community restroom. Like there's not another one, and I will just, I need to get this off my screen. I will say there was a time I came back a couple months ago after my Uganda trip and had to sit and watch a documentary with my classmates. And we were told at the beginning, hey, if something gets too tough for you, this is your trigger warning, you're able to walk out. And I'm sitting here thinking like, I'll be fine. We get to the part in the video where they're showing the community restrooms, and it looks akin to what I saw in Uganda. And everybody here is having like a regular experience that I might have been able to relate to earlier in my life, months before, just pre-Uganda. But I'm looking at the screen, remembering that, and actually, spoiler alert, having to use that restroom. And when I'm showing you all this, like, pay attention to the detail, pay attention to the roads, pay attention to the infrastructure. See if you see any actual parking lots. What are the people doing? What are they wearing? What do the doors look like? Are there doors to the shops and the places? Like, just pay attention, and also look for the beauty. Like, that's what I'm challenging you to do as I go back through and look at these things. Like, there's a reason why I feel the way I feel, and why I felt so compelled to share it with other people, because it wasn't all bad. I'm not complaining about it, but I'm trying to raise awareness. Out looking for food. So we're at a restaurant here in the village trying to get food for the research team. I'll take a picture of my plate when I get it. I've been told that the food here is pretty much like a monolith. It's the same. And that even gets into some of the stuff I was talking about earlier. There's no such thing as like a food court with tons of food options, just because, I mean, you're trying to get your nourishment any way you can. So if you want to see the food negotiation, hang on just a second. Just seeing up close some of the things that I had only driven past up until that point, it was interesting. It's so weird because I can see, when you don't look up close, it doesn't seem so bad. But when you just take a close, it just depends what you choose to zoom in on in your mind. And when you look at the buildings and they look fine, they look like regular buildings, but then you realize that every single building is unfinished, or the roof is half done, or there's like dirt surrounding it, or they call it dust, but it's dirt surrounding it. Where you look at the fact that, like, you just have to look at the details. And I think there's one shot in here where we went to go walk for food, and I was just looking around and just seeing up close some of the things that I had only driven past up until that point. It was interesting. And I recently went to the dentist and told her about my experience a little bit, and I was explaining how I couldn't find floss. She's like, no floss? And I'm like, no, I mean, I ran out halfway through my trip, and I just thought I could go get some floss. And she was like,
why would they have floss?
I'm like, I don't know. And maybe in the major city, this would have been a thing, but like, there was no floss anywhere, not at a gas station, not at the grocery store. I say grocery store because when I asked a coworker to take me to the grocery store, I'm like, not like that was the grocery store. Like there was no, that wasn't a thing. When I mentioned that dentist story, the part I forgot to mention, besides her disbelief that there's a place that exists without floss, she was like,
weren't you, I would be concerned about eating like the local food in the village.
and well, I told her, like, well, you either eat or you don't. And it's true. Like that day I was so hungry. Do you think I wanted food that came out of a place that looked like it wouldn't even make the health rating in the States, let alone fail? But you either eat or you don't. And my parents were here recently, but my dad asked me, like, well, what was the meat that usually accompanied the like 3 traditional things that you usually had on your plate? And I was like, I don't know. And he laughed. And I'm like, you either eat or you don't. Are you hungry or are you gonna eat? and this is an example of that. So when I thought, oh, we're gonna go get food, it's not like, oh, we're gonna go get some local, like, exciting food. Like, no, we're just going to get the same thing. And the woman that I was with, bless her heart, I could tell, like, if I said that I wasn't really feeling like their main dish, it wasn't good. So you just eat the food, you don't complain, and you won't starve. Wild. That's crazy. That's wild. Crazy. First dog I've seen. I stepped outside because someone was coughing profusely. So it's going on like 4 hours, probably 5, since I originally had to use the restroom, and can't do it. Just can't do it. We'll wait. We will wait. The entire time I didn't understand what was going on because I didn't understand Luganda. And one of the ladies in the study, so we had like the kid and then we had the parent. Sometimes the parent had HIV, sometimes they didn't. Irregardless, they introduced me and they say, well, she doesn't understand Luganda. And she kind of like scoffed and laughed at me. And there was a moment of humility there. And I'm pitying you for the way that you're living and what you're subjected to beyond your control. And you're pitying me because I'm illiterate in your language. And it was just a humbling experience. I didn't even take offense to it, but the way that she looked at me, that's how I knew she wasn't, like, she's not fully aware of her circumstance, because to look at me in such a way that you pity me doesn't make sense to the situation. That just goes to show how perspective works. It's extremely interesting and humbling and moving experience, especially to not understand anything and have to sit there for hours. It gave me time to reflect, and I sat there and I journaled away. And then when I realized that that whole disco thing happened, like, I just journaled away, and I was like not sure what to do, how to make myself useful. It's still very hard, and I don't know if I'm gonna be able to like put this experience into words. There's no way I can properly convey it through a screen, but I'm trying. And you just have to believe me. Contacts gave out on me and everything. It's been a long day. Had an attitude towards the end. I had my first moment of, do I need to get back on this plane to the States? I did end up using that potty. Apparently that was the good one. That was the good one, guys. We'll talk more another time, but that's a wrap. We finished field day. Before I get into this video, this last part of the video, I think I will share it because it adds a moment of rawness to all that I'm saying now. At the time, I didn't know whether I was going to share it with the world, but before I even rewatch it, I'm holding myself to it. I'm going to share it with you all The field day ended. Yes, I ended up using that restroom. Awful experience, got through it. And even in the end, you could see I was still trying to find the beauty. It was a beautiful sunset. Neither here nor there. I was not in the best mood. I was feeling a lot of emotions, and we drove home on the bumpy road. I'm having a conversation with the woman who's leading my study, and she asked me, hey, you know how we were identifying the people in the study by their vaccination cards? And I was like, yeah. And she's like,
You know, that's because they have like no other form of ID. And I'm like, oh. She's like, yeah, you know, so in the States, when you have to identify someone, what do you use?
and I'm like, it's pitch black outside. We're riding this bumpy car. I'm sitting in the back of the van. I'm tired. I'm thinking about when I first got in the van and I put on the seatbelt that nobody else puts on, and my new white shirt that I wore because the other one was kind of dirty. I had the same shirt. I had two of the same shirt, and I put the other one on because I wanted to look nice for field day. Didn't know what I was getting myself into. Put the seatbelt on. 2 seconds later, when I take it off, he apologizes, and I'm like, for what? And he's like, I have this dust strap across my chest. Neither here nor there. I'm just reflecting on the day, and you're asking me what we use to identify people in the States. I turn to her and I go, we use a driver's license. We use a driver's license. What do you mean? And so she's like,
Yeah, but what if you don't drive?
and these are such innocent questions she's asking. I'm like, well, then you just use your birth certificate. She's like,
Yeah, what if you don't have a birth certificate? Like, we don't, like, everyone doesn't drive here, and like, people don't usually have that, like a birth certificate.
I'm like, what do you mean? She's like,
You know, people are kind of just born off the record. Like, they're just born, and like, not everyone has that. And so then when you have like a vaccination card or something like that, it's your ID.
and I'm thinking back to a woman at work who didn't drive, and this is a grown woman with like grown children. And it's like the only time you hear about something like that is people who live in New York or the city. But anyway, so by having conversation like that, getting back home, I couldn't even have like, I don't even know that I had a warm shower. I think the power went out that night. Like, these are not abnormal things. I've been experiencing it, and I think I talked about that in the first video. But I got home, and when I say that I had been looking forward to that moment all day, I had to just envision my apartment style hotel room all day, just to remind myself that it existed and that I would be back there at some point in time. Because I felt so far out of my element that I needed to reconnect to something that felt familiar and normal. And at some points, it really didn't feel like I was gonna make it back there. And so me walking into my beautiful big hotel room and thinking about what exists on the outside of that room and what exists back a couple hours away, I got to go home. No matter how hungry I was or tired I was or how much I wanted to leave, I knew that that wasn't my full reality. No matter how much I didn't want to use that restroom, I knew that I was going to not have to deal with that the next day, or probably ever again if I didn't want to. And walking back into the hotel room, I just was filled with grief and sadness and remorse and frustration and anger and all the things that I just could not fully embrace or showcase all day. And actually, it was more than just that day. It's what I had been noticing. It was, I put my things down and I looked around my room and I thought about the reality that I was going to go home to, not home in the hotel, but home back in the States. And I thought about the fact that I cannot unsee what I have just seen. I cannot unlive what I have just lived. This is no longer a 30-minute PBS special. This is real life. People are living like this, and I'm mad. And so I sat I didn't even sit. I dropped to my knees in that hotel room adjacent to my bed, and I bawled. I mean, bawled as if someone had just died. And maybe someone did. Maybe it was the version of me that didn't know and that had never been exposed to this before. But my heart broke for every single person living in circumstances that they did not ask for or deserve that night. And afterwards, I filmed myself not crying because I thought I was over it. I was like, okay, we're not gonna get that on camera. I'll just express my thoughts, my raw thoughts, so I don't forget this moment. But you can still clearly see that I'm like disheveled. So what you're gonna see is not one of those like, why the heck is she crying on camera thing. Like, I actually was trying to be in a decent state before I put myself on camera. But this is like a fraction of it, and I'm gonna choose to share it with you all. This is my first time watching it since I've been back. Hello. Not me trying to sound cheery when I'm anything but cheery. This is me putting myself together after. Okay, let me try to put myself together. This is rough to watch, but I'm gonna stick to it. I'm gonna share it with you guys. Because when I watch these videos again, I want to remember, and this is reminding me, and this is exactly why I filmed it. And the reason why I'm breaking down is because I'm thinking about what happened when we were going to try to find the food, and what happened after we finished the food, and the fact that the lively town, the people that were cheery and riding their bikes or whatever, like the town was silent because in the middle of the study we were hearing tear gas bombs, and everyone just proceeded like life was normal. I mean, we would jump, but then we would just proceed like everything was normal. And I'm asking around like, what's happening, what's wrong? And they're like, oh, you know, they're playing, you know, it's about politics. And I'm like, what do you mean? And turns out just the people didn't ask about permission to play a friendly game of football. And not we think about it in the States, but like football, like soccer football. And it's like, this is all the people have to entertain themselves, one of the only things, and you silence the town because they didn't ask for permission. Like, it broke my heart. Like, anyway, very challenging to watch. I'm still gonna share it, and I hope that it speaks to you. And also for the woman in HR who just wanted to find a reason to convey to my mentor or whomever that I was problematic for not wanting to go to another field day, or for wanting to experience the beauty of the country, or go on a tour with other tourists, or whatever. This is why. Because there's nothing else that I would have gotten from doing another field day that looked exactly like that I didn't get from that one day. I didn't need to see it again. In fact, I vowed that I was not doing that again. And I realized on that day, I'm not built to do field research. Now, what I do think I'm built to do is get better at conveying the things that I've seen throughout my international experiences that I've had and will continue to have. But to experience that day, every day, I'm not built for that. I'm an empath by nature. And so like, there's a reason why I'm breaking here. And I was already dealing with my own personal stuff. Like, this put all that aside and put things into perspective for me. And I hope that it's doing the same for you. Okay, this is my second time. I think this is as cheery and dry-faced as it's gonna get. I'm having a real raw moment, and I promised myself that if I was gonna do YouTube, or if I was gonna like record this experience, then I would be balanced with it. I don't have any type of fancy equipment to help you hear me better, so maybe I'll put some subtitles in. Yeah, can't believe I'm filming myself like in this state, but if this never goes online,
I have to film it for myself. And this is the calm down version of what I just experienced like 5 minutes ago, or like 10 minutes ago. I have thoughts about the level of poverty that I am witnessing here, and I didn't realize how it was impacting me until I got home from that field day. Like, all I wanted all day was like a hot shower, a sanitary place to go urinate, and a hot meal. And I got a hot meal. It was the same foods that you find everywhere. It's the same lunch that I get every day at my research site, and I'm grateful for the nourishment. But to realize that it's not a joke when my coworker explains that like everyone pretty much eats the same thing, everywhere pretty much serves the same thing, and I'm like, what do you mean? Like, y'all have a favorite dish? It's kind of like United States has a burger, right? Like, no, everyone eats the same thing. And here I am ordering room service from the hotel because that's literally the only place that I find variety of food.
So I'm talking about it a bit here, but I really did hesitate putting this out there because I knew, and I know even outside of this clip what it sounds like. I am truly privileged. All of us in the States are privileged, and even outside of the States, people who live in these countries and they don't live like everyone else. Like, you and I'm not even like rich here in the States. It's just, I recognize my privilege, and I recognize most of the things I'm saying are from a place of privilege, but that's exactly why I feel it's important for me to say it, because it adds perspective. Yeah, and there was something else I was going to draw attention to, but maybe I'll just, like, anything I don't say that I want to add in later, I'll just add a note.
And then when you talk about like hot shower, like the fact that I could envision myself going home at the end of the day in a space that's different than where I was interviewing the people for my study, like, or where they were interviewing or talking to the people from the study, because I didn't speak the local language. Like, that's privilege. I was sitting there, like, I'm stopping myself from talking about certain things. I'm trying to hold it together for the purpose of the video, but like, what got me is I had held it together all day. If I haven't mentioned before, I'm here doing HIV research, and it's specifically for children. So like, I spend the entire day with kids who are in extreme poverty. You're trying to sing it in a second.
I just again, you just give me grace. Before it was crumbs, now I'm like sniffling up and doing a really poor job of like clearing my face. So just, you were either gonna get the rawness or you're not, and this is part of it. So we will continue.
With kids who are in extreme poverty, living with HIV, and their caregivers who were there also, who may or may not also have HIV. And so just the fact that I could like sit there and grumble and gripe and complain about how long it was taking and journal. I don't know if I said this on camera earlier, I certainly journaled about it. At one point we started hearing what sounded like gunshots, but they were tear gassing people outside our freaking building because they wanted to play a game of football, but they couldn't because of some political something. Like, and it didn't hit me like, okay, obviously tear gas is like a trigger word, you know, it's not a like pleasant thing. Like, I processed that there, but I think I was numb until just now, because I'm sitting here or I was sitting here before I made this video, like thinking, these people already don't have much. Like, they already don't have much. This is already their normal. And like, the one piece of joy that they find, they go outside and play a game, and like, you're tear gassing them. And I don't know the politics, so I can't, like, it's just so infuriating. Like, it's beyond sad. Like, it's infuriating. And on the way home, like, you see my hand shaking. On the way home, I'm like sitting there, and like the lady who's leading my my experience on this specific study, because I'm working on several, and she asked me, Ashley, do you know why you were taking the pictures as people were leaving? I was taking pictures of a document. It was an immunization document. I think I can say that on camera. It's not revealing any information. She's like, do you know why you were taking pictures of that? And I was like, oh, so we could have their identity information. So I was taking pictures of the ID page. And she's like, yeah. And then she goes on to say, well, what do you use for? She's like, that's how we verify their age. Like, that's how, if they come and want to monitor our study and say, how do you know that these are children? How do you know they were in the right age bracket? Like, that's how we know their age. Because like, not everybody has a birth certificate. And I'm like, only time I've heard of that is like my family who grew up on a farm, and it's the whole thing. But like, she just asked me like, well, what in your country, like what in the US, like what do you guys usually do? Like, if someone wants to verify your age, what do they look at? And I'm like, beaten down. It's the end of the day. Like, I'm not really trying to talk. I'm in the back of this car being beaten around because the roads are ridiculous, and like, I'm trying to engage in conversation. And when she asked me this, I stop and I'm like, how does she not know the answer? We use a driver's license. My age is verified with a driver's license. And she's like, oh yeah, like, what about for children? And I'm like, well, I guess for kids, like, we use our birth certificate. And she's like, yeah, like, you know, people are born at home. You saw where we were at, which that's a whole other thing. Like, so we were taking the interviews in a maternity ward, and I'm looking around like, you let mothers give birth to babies here. Okay. But so she's like, you know, that place we were at, like, they don't have electricity. I'm like, what qualifies this as a medical facility? Like, I don't understand. I don't get it. And she showed me a hospital earlier that day too, and I'm like thinking about the hospital back home, and I'm just I struggle to make these types of videos, because if it's not sad, it's infuriating. I don't know, like, making these videos isn't gonna cure, you know, poverty. And it certainly doesn't dispel rumors that are already out there about sub-Saharan Africa. It doesn't make people want to come here. But what's crazy is that the entire time I'm looking around like, y'all live in the most beautiful space ever. And it's neglected and underfunded and all the rest because of stigma, because of discrimination, because of racism, because of historical context, like, and several other things that I'm not even aware of. But it's nothing wrong with the space itself. The weather's beautiful, the mountains are beautiful. Like, I can just see tourist money flying in. I can see not even just tourists, I can see a society thriving here in a different way, in a non-impoverished way. But that's not the case. So it's not, there's nothing wrong with the people. So this is why I didn't want to showcase this part of the trip, because it's like, where I'm at right now, like, it's luxurious, it's beautiful. This is what I was ready to get home to. Like, I want to show that it's not all bad, but I get these moments that remind me of my privilege, or that I'm a foreigner, period, when like someone tells me they've never had a hamburger or a cheeseburger, or someone tells me that like they've never left Uganda, and I'm like, well, I guess that was me, and when I've never left the United States, right? But like, to live in this type of situation and have never left, you don't know that life is different elsewhere. You don't. Camera shaking. Whew. I can't express all of my thoughts, and I really hope that someone, belligerent on the internet doesn't like fire me up for whatever reason you people on YouTube sometimes do, find any reason to just like pick apart a person's like raw emotion. But this is real, this is raw. I have just spent the entire day either in a bumpy car, hungry, having to pee, having nowhere to do it, but something that looks like it came out of Slumdog Millionaire, and being hungry. Did I say that already? Also, like, taking in the visual of realizing, like, where do you lay your head at night? Like, that was my thought. Where are you laying your head tonight? If this is, where do you sleep? What does the inside of this cardboard looking thing look like? This metal looking thing look like? This. And have you ever seen outside of your environment? But the same goes for privileged people. Like, you need to see outside of your environment. And then maybe when we see this, we can see the injustice and you'll be just as enraged as I am. Because how do we let this happen? I'm not gonna scream at y'all like y'all are the cause of the world's problems, but like, I will probably cry about this more off camera at some point when it randomly comes to me like it did today. Like, I know that I'm not gonna be okay on my last day here. I know it. And I'm gonna have to do my best to hold it together. And I don't know what type of reverse culture shock I'm gonna have when I get back home, because I'm probably not gonna deal with anyone's crap. Not even my own crap, like complaining. I already had it up to here with people complaining, being in med school, complaining about stuff that, like, it just makes me like, do you not understand the joy that you had when you got this acceptance letter? Like, I know it's not perfect, but like, anyway, I was already up to here with the way my perspective is set up, and my perspective just got a whole lot bigger. So I don't even know how I can deal with certain comments, certain behavior. I don't even know what I'm going back home to. I don't even know who I am anymore.
I knew that I was going to end up being that person who's like, hey guys, people have it worse than you. And I'm not trying to like feed into what I know some people regard as like toxic positivity or whatever. Like, no, it's just raising awareness. And yeah, like, there's plenty of conversations with classmates. They're not enemies, villains, or anything like that, but I just have to share that my perspective is different, and there's a responsibility that I have to speak about what I've seen, because otherwise, what is it all for? What's it all for? So, anyway, yeah.
I will leave the rest of that thought in a thought bubble because I journaled about it today. I'm ending it here. When I put this all together, I will decide if I want to include it. I ask for grace in people understanding that everything that I saw, I didn't record. I tried to capture the beauty as much as possible. But just the fact, and let me just end on this note. There is, besides like the natural beauty of like nature or whatever in this space, and the beauty of the people and the way that they behave and they act and just the joy they have, let me just say this. People here are thriving in their circumstance. They have businesses, They have a way of life that if you took people like me, people of privilege, and you put us here, we wouldn't know what to do with ourselves, what to do with the lack of resources, what to do with the inflation. Like I wouldn't have a clue. They're thriving. They don't need my pity. They are outstanding. All I'm saying is that they deserve more. And I don't know whose job it is to give it to them. All I'm calling out is the inequality. It's something you hear, it's something you know, but until you're face to face with it, until you have conversations with people who... I'm gonna end this here. I'm gonna respond to whatever I need to respond to before bed. And then I'm gonna go to bed. And then I will go on that safari tomorrow, hopefully. Whew. I gotta get my mind together because this is... Good night, y'all. To be continued. I'm tired, I'm exhausted, and I'm really proud of myself for making this video because it's definitely a test week, and so I have to do things that make me feel good and that make me feel fulfilled, and this is one of them. So I think I want to take my time with this project. The goal is to put this out, to start the YouTube channel, and I want to take it slow. I want to digest each part of reliving the experience, and there will be more soon. So again, if you enjoyed this video, there will be more coming. If you haven't seen part 1, go back and watch it. See y'all next time.